Today I am doing a sort of tutorial on doing backgrounds for your comics. It's less of a tutorial and more of an overview about my process that hopefully will help some people, so let's jump into this. I've written out the basic steps of what I tend to do. It usually starts with planning. I start with a little floor plan showing where I want all the objects in a room to go. In this case, I am working on a bedroom. You can see the thumbnail that I created. It's not a thumbnail from anything, it's just something I pulled out of nowhere of Trixie sitting in her bedroom. So I do a little floor plan showing where, say, her bed is. She has a wardrobe and a laundry basket. I also tend to rough in where the windows are, where the doors are, any important object, and these sketches are very rough. And once I have my floor plan down, I can then start roughing it into perspective. So again, this is very rough. The perspective is not correct by any means, but it's very important to kind of see things in 3D. So I usually will sketch it out, usually in 1-point perspective, which means that there is one vanishing point. It's as if you're looking at something like straight on in perspective, if that makes sense. So it usually includes just to show a little bit more of a 3D model, you know, like in The Sims where they you're looking into the Sims house and part of the walls are cut away, but you can still see the back walls. It's like that, but very rough and sketched out and not in proper perspective at all. But it lets me see how large the objects are in relationship to each other. It gives more of an appearance of 3D shape, and I can get a better sense of how tall things are and how much space they take up, whereas the floor plan is more just to figure out where do I want these objects to actually be. And then once I have everything sketched out, from my floor plan to my little 3D sketch. Oh, also, whenever I'm working with Bones on scenery, he doesn't really care about floor plans. Those are usually just for me, but he always appreciates having the 3D sketches, so he gets a better idea of how things will actually look in the comic, in the panels I'm going to draw. So if you're working with someone, it's very helpful to have these little 3D sketches. Even though they're not perfect, they're better at conveying what the space actually looks like. So usually when I go into penciling my pages, that is when I start figuring out, say, the floor plan and the perspective and the backgrounds. My thumbnails are super sketchy. They are usually just little squiggles figuring out where the main character is and maybe some important objects in the room. They're usually very focused on composition, so when I start to pencil, that is when I start figuring out what the room looks like, the blocking meaning just where the characters are in the room, how they move, etc. So yeah, here I go. Drawing backgrounds and putting them into perspective, I don't immediately start with my perspective ruler lines. So figuring out where my horizon line is and then figuring out all the leading lines from there. I usually start with drawing the shape of the room or maybe an important object, and then I add perspective from there. It was a technique I was taught in school for when we were learning how to draw things in perspective. We were always told to go out into, say, the hallway or into a room and just vaguely sketch out what we're drawing and then kind of guesstimate at the perspective. It didn't have to be super correct. And then from there we would add all our perspective rulers on top and actually figure out how the perspective actually works. So that is usually my strategy. I start sketching out what I kind of want the room to look like and then I correct it afterward. So I've drawn in the inside of the room. You can see the back wall. You can see kind of the leading lines that show that the room is 3D. It's like standing inside of a cube. If you can imagine that, that's usually how I work on rooms, is you just imagine you're in a cube and you draw a transparent outline around all that. If you start looking into perspective tutorials, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. And hopefully I will do another video all about perspective and its rules once I've done a little bit more research so that I can give you guys actual hints and tricks. Yes, so I start by roughing things in. I also make sure to throw my character in to know where they are, how they fit into the perspective. It really helps me place the objects. Even though I kind of know where they are together, it's still super helpful to know where my character is, because a lot of the perspective will revolve around them, if that makes sense. Well, in comics and most art, the character is probably going to be my focal point. It's where I want my reader to look. So building the perspective around the character so that everything kind of points toward them, it's very important. So it's always good to know kind of where your character is And it also helps you make sure that they are in proper perspective as well, and that they fit into the environment that you're drawing them in. So here I began with figuring out my horizon line. The horizon line is the vanishing point for all of your other lines. I know if you hear horizon line, you think of like, oh, that's where like the land meets the sky when you look off into the distance. That's not really how it works in drawing. It is more where all your perspective lines lead. In comics, it is usually where the eye line of your camera is. I hope that makes sense. Basically, the way I see comic panels is as if you have like a camera and it's facing a scene, like similar to how, say, like a director would film something for a movie. So you have your camera, and basically the middle of your camera lens is like the crosshair, and the horizontal part of the crosshair, that is your horizon line. So if I'm ever doing, say, like an over-the-shoulder shot of one character looking at the other, I will use the character in the foreground. Their eye line will be the vanishing point. I hope that makes sense. So one mistake I made here was I tried to give Trixie, the character in this panel, I tried to make her eye line the vanishing point, which it isn't, because the camera isn't looking at her directly in the eye. It's actually below her eye line. The camera's looking up at her very slightly. And the way I figured this out was I added proper perspective lines on top of the simple draft I did of that back wall. So the 4 lines that lead to the corner of that back rectangle, I just followed those, and where they all crossed together is where the actual horizon line was. From there, I start to put in little grids all over to show like, okay, here's the inside of my box. Let's measure this out correctly. I start putting in all the little details of like the window, which is another rectangle. I usually begin with objects, I usually begin by sketching in, say, like the area they take up on the floor or on the wall, which is usually a rectangle. If it's something circular or oddly shaped, I still tend to start with squares and rectangles because they're really easy to put into perspective. And from there, I build upward. Because if it's a square on the floor, I can figure out where the 4 corners are and build upward and start putting it into perspective. So yeah, and then I just build upwards, always making sure that my corners and my lines adhere to the vanishing point. I tend to do several layers of this over and over again, as you'll see. I really like to build up with my perspective and do several different sketch versions of it, and I'm always double checking, going back to my vanishing point. I'm always redrawing it on new layers. It always stays in the same place, but it is nice to check in on it and correct it as I go. Sometimes I make mistakes like I did with the eye line. So once I have my perspective down and I know where my character is, I know where all the objects are, I've got everything like correctly proportioned, and again, for me, that's a lot of just feeling it out, drawing it at different heights and different ways, until it feels like it looks good, and always double checking with my perspective rulers to make sure that I'm not just making it up. Yeah, because as I do every layer, I'm always double checking, like, does this make sense? Is this actually in perspective? And to do that, you always just draw lines back to your vanishing point, which is where your little crosshair is standing. So always check back with that. Yeah, and then once I finally have that all ready, I then start doing my line work. I tend to use like thick lines and lines with a lot of variety when I'm inking, say, people or important objects. But when I'm drawing, say, like the walls of a room, or say like the frame of a bed or the wardrobe or the window, whatever, whenever it's very like rigid and has like straight lines, I always use a ruler and straight lines. It just makes things feel a lot more neat. It keeps your perspective feeling very strong. I also have trouble drawing straight lines by hand, so it's always nice to use a little ruler to help. And then things that I want to have a bit more personality, say like the way Trixie is sitting on the bed, it pushes down on the mattress and the blankets, so they have folds in them. That's when I go back to using like more organic lines that aren't super rigid. I don't use a ruler, and it just adds a little bit more life to the lines as I'm working. And then once I have everything inked, I start to put in, my shadows, my lighting, all that good stuff. This took a lot of practice to figure out. I used to grab photographs of showrooms or interior design photos, or even just going to different rooms and drawing them out. I used to study those. I used to put red lines over top of them to figure out where the perspective was. I did a lot of studying on perspective rules before I got to where I am now. I still think that I have a long way to go when it comes to perspective. Truth be told, I get lazy with it. I don't always check as rigidly as I should. I'm a little messy. I let my lines get all crazy and forget to use my ruler all the time. And yeah, just with practice, I got a lot better. It really helps to take photographs or real-world examples, draw over top of them, figure out the perspective on them. Because it is one thing to learn the rules of perspective, like vanishing lines and, 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, 3-point, etc. It's all very important to learn the rules of that and how it works, but you'll find that when you start working in perspective, you might do very extreme perspectives because you don't exactly know where all your anchor points are going to go or where your vanishing line is. For example, in 2-point perspective, if your anchor points are crazy or way too close, you're going to have a really, really intense perspective on what you're drawing. Whereas you put them far apart, you have a more natural looking thing, Because if they're too close, you look like you have a weird fisheye thing and it looks really extreme, whereas if the points are far apart, it's more natural, like a photography lens would look. God, I hope this makes sense. I'm always so nervous about these tutorials because I'm I don't know what I'm doing. I guess go out there, get your references, draw over top of them, learn your perspective rules, and in the future I will do a more comprehensive video about perspective. But like I said, I want to make sure that I know my stuff before I start telling you lies. I hope this helps you if you're ever not sure how to put a background into your comic. The perspective should be dictated by the composition you're working with. It is hard because when you are learning perspective, you might be I don't want to do a 2-point perspective because I don't get it. I just want to do 1-point perspective because it's easier. And trust me, it's way easier. But still, the angle of your room, the angle of the perspective, all of that should be dictated by the composition. So it's always very important to understand, say, the composition of your thumbnail before you start putting in the perspective, instead of drawing all the perspective in the beautiful background and then trying to fit your character into it. They should always kind of go hand in hand and happen at the same time so that they all look cohesive together. Alright, I think that's all I have. Thank you so much for watching. There is no live stream on Saturday. There will be another video, so I hope you enjoy that. I hope this video was helpful. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or if you'd like to request a video topic, please leave a comment down below. Let me know if you're confused about anything. I can expand on it in later videos. I hope. And yeah, if you want to see more videos about webcomics or about making your comics really cool, I don't know if I can help you make them cool, but if you want more videos about webcomics, please make sure to subscribe. I'm gonna redo that because that was stupid. And if you'd like to see more videos about webcomics and making comics, make sure to subscribe. We've got more stuff coming your way. And if you'd like to read any of my comics, make sure to go check out our Ticktail store. There is a link to it in the description down below. Thank you once again for watching. I will see you guys next time. Goodbye!